This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting on August 10th. And I'll read the remote participation text. Oh, Colleen, all right. All right, you're
Take
here.
it on time.
You got it. Okay. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, public bodies otherwise governed by the OML are temporarily relieved from requirements that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public. So as long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate and alternative means. This meeting will be, this meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by joining Zoom meeting ID number 840-0877-2826 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100 prior to the meeting. All right, so like I said, I've called the meeting to order. One item on, the first item is to approve the agenda. However, I'm going to start off with the agenda needs to be edited because the timestamp next to call to order is 6 o'clock. The meeting is to start at 7 o'clock. So I do have to make that amendment. It didn't get caught. So with that, except for Barry's the one who let me know. And then I wondered why people had a couple questions, and it's like, it says 7, it says 7. So that's one thing that I do need to change.
Does that mean we get to still end at 8?
Yeah, I'm doing my best. you know me, Julie.
Do you need me to make the motion?
Yes, if you could.
Okay, so I move to accept the agenda for August 10th meeting with the change to a start at 7 p.m.
All right.
Second.
Julie makes the motion. Colleen seconded. Since we're on Zoom, I've got to go through the roll call. All right. Barry?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jess?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
And Jason?
Aye.
And the chair says aye, so all in favor. So we've got the agenda approved as amended. Next on the agenda is the minutes for July 6th, 2022. I did not see anything. Jess, you always do a good job. I didn't see anything. Does anybody else have anything that they may want to bring up with regard to the minutes?
Neither do I. Says Barry.
No? All right. Okay, all right. Can I hear a motion? Please to accept. Pardon?
One question, should I start amending the minutes to reflect who says aye and who says yes?
I don't think so. And hush. I know. I take things seriously. No, if they need to, they can go ahead. If individuals need to, they can watch the video. I know. Okay, thanks, Jess. Keep me on my toes. All right. So can I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
So moved.
Julie?
Second.
Barry seconded. All right, we'll go ahead and take the roll call. Let's go with Jason.
Yes.
Okay, Colleen.
I wasn't at the meeting. Do I need to abstain? Or?
Abstain. Yep.
Yeah, I will abstain.
I just realized it too. Jason wasn't either, so it's an abstention from him then. Jess?
Aye.
Julie?
Jess, do you have your pen ready? Arg.
Arg me, bucko.
Got all my pens ready. Arg.
Barry?
Yes.
And the chair says yes. So
Try an ugh in there.
we'll get one in.
Ugh.
Every once in a while, we try to do that in dispatch to try to say a word somewhere in the transmission, and it works out. Okay. Next is the correspondence and invoices. We did have an invoice from Jen Golson for $2,000. There's the invoice. I sent it on to the accountant's office for payment. So I think we should be up to date, Jen. We'll keep our fingers crossed. So again, it was for $2,000, just an even number.
Yep.
Okay. And then the next item for correspondence is the appraiser, the Foster Company, got in contact with the realtor of the property. And I'm going to go ahead now that, that's available on High Street. And with that, he does have some ideas with regards to the property. He'd like to meet with some members of the town itself. Alan and I will be meeting with him at 10 o'clock in the morning tomorrow over at the town. And that will be Ken Croft, who is the appraiser. So with that, go ahead.
Oh, just a question. So is Foster Company the same as the appraiser?
That's the appraiser.
Okay,
That's the appraiser, the company, and Ken Croft is the appraiser with them.
okay.
That's who we signed the contract with and such.
Okay,
So he's finished, and hopefully we can have something that I can send to the committee by within, hopefully, I'm hoping within a week. So I think that works out well. All right, I noticed that we do have Jeff Tillotson here from the Affordable Housing Trust. I'll go ahead and I'll let you know what happens at that meeting, Jeff. All right, okay. So I think that will work out, again, really well. That has been my correspondence and invoices. Has anybody else received any additional correspondence that they want to bring up so Jess can put it in the minutes? Nothing? No? Okay. All right then. So if that's the case, there's nothing else. Next on the agenda will be the public hearing. And I will say, Jen, you got everybody with you?
Yeah, it's just me tonight. And so I have a PowerPoint to share and I see that I have the ability to do that. Is that, or do you want me to hold off?
Yeah, just hold on for a minute. I have to read that. I'm opening up the public hearing. So Jess, it's what, 7:09?
yep.
Okay. And with that, the legal notice, I'll go ahead and read. Where its notice is hereby given in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, that the Ayer Community Preservation Committee will hold a virtual public hearing on Wednesday, August 10th at 7 p.m. The purpose of this meeting will be to review the final draft version of the Ayer Community Preservation 5-year plan. All residents, members of the general public, and any persons interested or wishing to be heard may call 978-772-8220, extension 100, during business hours prior to the meeting for the Zoom meeting information. It's Community Preservation Committee, Jana Providake is chair. This was in the Neshoba Valley Voice on the 29th of July as well as August 5th. It also was published out on the bulletin board for the town more than 2 weeks before this this meeting. So I think we did pretty good on that. If there's anything beforehand, if there's anything with regards with the public who may have questions with regards to this public hearing and you're watching this Zoom afterwards, please give a call over to Carly or send an email to cpc@ayer.ma.us and we'll be able to go ahead and answer your questions. I want to make sure that everybody knows that they can give feedback, and such, but at least we'll, be able to hear from you. And again, if you've got any type of questions of what goes on during these meetings, we are available through those types of contacts. That's what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep quiet and turn it over to Jen so that she can go ahead and show the presentation. Jen, thank you very much.
All right, that sounds great. So I'm going to do a sort of a condensed version of a presentation we did at the public forum that we held a few months ago, and really focus in on the draft plan. But I will spend a little bit of time just I'm assuming this is being videoed, and maybe people will watch it later. And so I just wanted to give a little bit of context before we dive into the draft plan. And what I'll focus on is the draft goals in the plan, as that's the most substantive piece that would help determine policy around what should be funded in the next few years and what kind of applications would be particularly competitive for funds. And so this is just the list, and I hope this is accurate. This was held over from a few months ago, so I'm hoping nothing's changed. And then, of course, I'm Jen Goldson. I'm a planning consultant. I was going to bring our colleague Elena Zabar tonight, but it turned out she had another meeting for another project. So you get me tonight instead of me and Alana. But I forgot to take her name off of this. All right. And so today, again, as Janet, read the notice, that this is the public hearing that is required for the Community Preservation Committee. And tonight, what we'd like to do is just get your feedback on the draft goals. And then if the CPC would like to request any changes to those goals, that would be good to talk about tonight after public comments. If there are no changes to the goals, or even if there are, you could potentially vote to approve the plan tonight if you felt ready to. And of course, you can do that as the draft stands, or you can approve with contingent on making some revisions, perhaps that we talk about in the course of this meeting, and perhaps as a reaction to any public comments that are given. And so I'm just going to put that out there. You don't have to approve it tonight, but this is the last meeting that we have with you in our scope. And so if you do approve it at a later date, you'll just need to tell us, and we can, make any changes, finalize it, and then send it off to you. All right. So I'll go over a little bit of basics, but again, it is condensed from the last time, and then the forum, and then I'll just talk about the goals. And then we want to open it up for any public comments, and of course, CPC comments as well. And so the basics in a nutshell: the Community Preservation Act was signed into law in Massachusetts. In 2000, and it's a very unique piece of legislation that Massachusetts has, that some other states have tried to do different versions of, but nothing's quite like the one Massachusetts adopted. And it's about 22 years old now. And there are 188 communities, and that represents more than half of the number of municipalities in the state. This map shows you what cities have adopted and what towns. The towns are in green and the cities are in orange. Again, it's a state law, and what it allows communities to do, as many of you probably already know, is to adopt a surcharge on your local property taxes. And Ayer has changed that percentage, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. But once you start to generate revenue, it goes into a special fund called the Community Preservation Fund, and then you also can obtain state trust fund distributions. So you can increase and leverage your local dollars with these state dollars that are collected at the Registry of Deeds in every community, no matter whether they have adopted CPA or not. So the communities who have adopted CPA get the benefit of this extra state funding. And these are the categories you can fund: open space and natural resources, historic resources, community housing, and outdoor recreation. We're not going to go into the ins and outs of eligibility tonight, but of course, if any questions come up, I'm happy to answer those. We did a detailed rundown of eligibility a couple months ago when we did the forum. So Ayer is an early adopter, and you voted way back in 2001, along with all the other first adoption communities. Newton was another one, and I worked in Newton for many years in the beginning of the aughts. You were first adopted with a 3% surcharge, and then a year later reduced that to 1%, but then a couple of years ago increased it back to the 3%. And then, of course, you also have the exemption, low income exemption, and you've generated over $6 million. And of course, this is a very round estimate. And again, that's through both your local property tax collection, your local surcharge, and that's shown in this light blue color on this chart. And then the state trust fund distribution, those funds that are collected at the Registry of Deeds and dispersed to communities based on a formula, is shown in this dark blue. And you'll see that when you reduce down to 1%, well, two things happened. One, the state used to match 100% in the very beginning. So you got a lot more money in the beginning because of that. But then, given the reduction in the surcharge and more adopting communities, the state trust fund was depleted, or was maybe depleted is a strong word, but there wasn't as much money to go around. And so that's what, if anybody questions, well, why are these changing? That the bars are in different proportions to your local collection. And that's true. And then, of course, when you adopt it again at the 3%, and also you'll see it go up, but also there's more money, and there's been some state legislation to try to protect that state trust fund with additional monies through changing the collections at the registry. So those are all the reasons why, in case people are wondering. But that dark blue again is the state trust fund distribution. Okay. You have funded 35, and I actually am thinking that we didn't update this since your last town meeting. So I think you have 4 more, if my memory is correct. So you probably actually have 39 rather than 35 here. And this again is slightly old. I'm realizing I just took these from the forum and I didn't update them. So these don't include the things that you did at town meeting. But before town meeting this year, what you had done is about 17% of your total revenue that you appropriated went to historic preservation, 18% for housing, 15% for open space, and about 10% for recreation. And then the 4 that you funded this year, and someone correct me if I'm misstating anything. I'd rather you correct me on the spot than be polite and wait till the end. And I won't consider it rude. Let me just say it that way if you interrupt me, because I'd rather be accurate. So the 4 that you approved are digitizing the Public Spirit and Neshoba Valley Voice documents, records at the library. And the purpose of digitizing is, it is to make the documents more accessible, but the eligible purpose is to preserve those original documents so that people still have access to use the documents without touching and handling the originals, which can become very fragile over time. Peroni Park, rehabbing Kitty Junction Playground, replenishing the trust for rental assistance, and the Flanagan Pond Public Access Feasibility Study to get more public access. And this is a map. Again, we did not include the new projects, but this is a map, a slightly older version of all the projects that you had funded and over the years. And you can see that the red dots are showing historic preservation projects. The yellow is community housing. Dark green is open space and light green is active rec. And then we have combination ones that are historic preservation and community housing in orange.
Okay, 2 things on here.
Yeah.
Jen. There is on the lower left-hand corner, the former Central Fire Station Affordable Housing Project. We removed that off of the list. You could keep the former Central Fire Station as being just historic preservation, because we did fund $30,000 for the step gables that are on the top of the building. But the housing project has been removed because the individual who was going to do it was ended up backing out of the project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't notice that on the.
Okay, we'll fix that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And so, to apply to funds, I like to go through this little diagram because sometimes people wonder, well, how do we get access to these funds? Who creates these ideas, and how do you get the funding? And so step 1 is really anybody could have the idea. You don't have to be anybody official. You could be a resident of the community. You could be some other way affiliated with the community or involved in some regional nonprofit, but really anybody could be a department manager. Anybody can have an idea as long as it's eligible. But then you need to get the agreement from the owner, because the Community Preservation Act deals with real property, even digitizing documents. You may think of real property as real estate, and it is about real estate, but it's also about real property, such as artifacts, documents, things like that as well. And so you need to figure out, well, who either owns or has custody of that land or that property or those documents. And then you need to get agreement from whoever has the ownership or the custody of that property. And then you can apply for funds. And then the CPC's job is to review all of the applications, evaluate them, look back at their most current community preservation plan and what their priorities are, look at their funding to make sure they have enough funding. And then they vote to recommend projects to town meeting, and then town meeting has the final vote. Now, a project cannot get to town meeting unless the Community Preservation Committee votes to recommend a project. So if the CPC votes to not recommend a project, the project does not go to town meeting. So just to be clear, and town meeting can do one of three things. It can deny the recommendation, it can approve it as it was recommended, or it can approve it with a reduced amount of funding. All right, so let's dive right into these goals. And so again, these are draft goals that the Community Preservation Committee has seen versions of, and we have revised based on prior conversations. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what we've done to get to this point. And so we started this project back in January, and we really started just by trying to understand Ayer and what you've been doing with the funds. What are your resources? We did a series of maps, one of which was mapping out where your projects have been. And we created these profiles, one for each CPA category and an overall profile. We also looked back at other planning documents, master plan, housing production plan, any planning documents, other documents, that studies that are relevant. And we created a summary document of key not findings is the wrong word, but key goals or priorities from those documents that are related to eligible eligible ideas or projects for CPA. And then we did a series of focus groups, one for each of the CPA categories. And we also did an online survey. And I'll talk about each of these mechanisms a little bit more in a moment. And then we held a public forum back on April 6th. And, or I'm sorry, that was to review it back in May, on May 4th. And we compiled the results from both the forum and the survey. And then we met with the CPC in June to review that and talk about, and we prepared an outline of goals to see if we're heading in the right direction based on what we learned through the analysis of your resources and other plans, priorities, et cetera. What we learned through the focus groups, what we learned through the survey, and what we learned through the forum. We came up with these draft ideas, vetted it with the CPC, prepared a summary, and then put it all together into a full draft plan, which they reviewed, which you all reviewed in July 6th. And now we're here at the official public hearing to review the plan. And the idea is that after this meeting, whether you vote tonight or not, we'll be prepared to finalize it based on any revisions you want to see, or perhaps you'll want to adopt it as it stands with that revision to the map for sure. Okay, so here's just and you've seen this before, and we've provided detailed summaries, but just to give some high level findings, just as a reminder, the community survey results, I have in my notes, which I can't see right now. Sorry, I'm discombobulated because I usually use a monitor and I'm actually at home, so I can't see the notes I created for this, but it actually said how many responses we got, and I don't remember offhand. I think it was 200 and something. If someone else remembers, just chime in. Okay, but I can look that up when I take this down. I can go look at my notes. I just can't see it in the screen. But these are the general priorities that people talked about in the community survey results. So one, there's a priority for outdoor recreation projects to improve and update existing parks and playground. We asked people in each of the fundable categories, what would you like to see done in those categories as your priorities? And then at the end, that last bullet is overall, oh, I'm sorry. Priority. No, I guess I didn't talk about overall priorities here, but in the next slide, when we go to the forum, I'll talk about overall priorities. So this slide just shows the four priorities within each of the categories. So ideas for funding. So the first one is about outdoor recreation, and the priorities from the survey are improving and updating with a focus on existing parks and playgrounds. So of course you're allowed now, for the last decade, you've been allowed to rehab parks and playgrounds, existing recreational resources. You can also preserve those, protect them from harm. So you have a lot of freedom to improve and update existing parks and playgrounds, including making handicap accessibility improvements, other improvements, new equipment, lots of different ways to improve parks and playgrounds. The second is about housing. So the priority for the survey participants was continuing to support existing renters. And you saw that in your last town meeting, you did a vote to do the rental assistance again. Priority for historic preservation was to protect resources that are threatened by new development. So those could be private resources that you can purchase, and that's of course an expensive idea. Maybe you do it in collaboration with other entities so that CPA is not the only funding source, but you could in theory buy threatened historic resources, or you could buy a preservation restriction rather than the fee outright, the property outright. And then people talked both here and in the forum, I think, as well as in the focus groups, about we really want to promote historic preservation projects, but we really like it if it could also help other things, specifically creating community spaces. So adaptive reuse type projects that both preserve an historic resource and create new community spaces. So creating a community space in and of itself is not an eligible CPA project, but as a result of a historic preservation project, that could be eligible. And then the last under open space projects is the priorities per the survey are acquiring or protecting more undeveloped land, particularly when it provides public access and creating walking paths that connect open space areas. And then also acquiring and protecting undeveloped land for the purposes of mitigating climate change impacts. And so you'll see that these results from both the survey and the forum, which I'll show you next, are reflected in the wording of the goals. So in the community forum, we did ask, what do you feel overall should be the priorities in the next 5 years? And so you can see how that broke down just among the different CPA categories. 9% of people say, well, it really depends. I don't have a preference over the categories. It's more around what is the project and how, people have different reasons outside of just these categories. But the categories, if you just look at the responses to the categories, we have open space ranking the highest at 32%, choosing that as a priority, 30% choosing outdoor recreation, and then community housing, 26%. So those are all very high. They're very close, 32, 30, and 26%. And then really falling behind, so a more significant gap, is for historic preservation. And I think people really want to see preservation combined with other priorities, such as the community space that was mentioned. All right, and some ideas from the forum participants: use the historic firehouse or other historic buildings as a community center, or renovating a room in town hall so it could be used for community events. So these are all historic preservation projects, but combining another goal of creating community space. Acquire open space, particularly to connect to existing open spaces. So that's similar to what we heard in the survey as well. People talking about walking paths to connect, and here we're talking about acquiring other open space to connect and make those connections. Creating affordable housing options for the specific target audience, target populations mentioned were younger people, families, older adults, as well as the rental assistance. And we also heard the rental assistance through the survey. And then for recreation, people wanting to see new facilities here, focused a little bit more here on new facilities over rehab or preservation of existing. Not that you can only do one or the other, but that's just something that we noticed. So here talking about new facilities, tennis and pickleball courts and splash pad were some ideas that were specifically mentioned. All right, and so let me dive into these goals here. So we organize these with overall goals, which, oh, I'm sorry, we should have broken this out. You should have 4 white circles with open space separate from recreation. I apologize for that mistake. Some communities combine the two in their plans, and so that's why we made that mistake. But I can fix this. If you like this little graphic, we can actually, we can fix that for you. But the idea here is just a diagram showing you how there are these overall goals that I'll talk about here on this slide that really would affect any kind of project. It's globally looking at all the projects before you. How do you prioritize among them? And so the way this is suggesting, the way we wrote it, is you would prioritize open space and passive recreation and active recreation projects. So open space as well as active rec. You would prioritize those over the other categories, but you'd also support community housing initiatives. And then you would support, third priority would be historic preservation projects at the minimum 10% funding level, which is the minimum required by statute. Support for, and that I would say that these are not hard and fast. It doesn't mean you can't spend more than 10%. If there's a good project that comes along, for example, if you have a project that's also going to create community space, you may want to bump up over that 10% because that's really addressing a specific goal that came out of this plan. The fourth overall goal is support eligible projects that actually fall into multiple CPA categories. So you might have an affordable housing and historic preservation. And if those are combined, that would be highly attractive to support. Or perhaps you have an open space and affordable housing. You know, perhaps you buy land for both purposes, where you can issue, you know, carve off a section of that land to issue a request for proposals for a developer to build some kind of housing that you particularly need, that's eligible for CPA funds. And then the other larger portion of the land perhaps goes to open space and makes those connections to other open spaces. So that's just an example of how you may look at a project that combines multiple CPA categories as being highly desirable. And then 5, really continue to look at particularly the master plan update. Throughout the goals, in the category goals, we taught, because you asked us to, and I thought it was a good idea, we tied specific goals to, oh, and this supports master plan goal number blah, 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 or in the housing production plan, or, you know, other plans. And we tied at your request, tried to show, oh, in the open space and recreation plan, of course, we tried to show that these goals are compatible. And when they are directly compatible, we cited that and cross-referenced that. But here it talks about just the goals in general outlined in the master plan, which of course is the comprehensive plan for the town. And so really you don't want to go against what is outlined in the master plan. And so that's also a priority to support, you know, projects with an eye toward, are they meeting goals there? Okay, I'm going to keep going and take questions and comments at the end here. So the open space goals, there are 3, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I took out the language about, and this supports master plan goal number X, you know, X, Y, and Z, just for the sake of space on the slides. But just know that in the actual document, we do all those cross references. So acquire and protect undeveloped land to mitigate climate impacts. And you'll see we pulled a lot of these directly from the comments and feedback that we heard. And then people mentioned in strategic areas like key wildlife corridors along the Nashua River or on the Snake Hill corridor. Acquire large parcels of open space due to the ecological significance and potential increased connectivity they offer to your trail network. And then the third draft goal is acquire and protect small parcels too. So the second one was about large parcels. The last one is about small parcels of undeveloped land when possible to serve as pocket parks, so more at that neighborhood level. The outdoor recreation goals in the draft are rehabilitate existing parks and playgrounds, create connections, again, between existing and new open spaces and rec facilities and schools through walking and bike paths. Rehabilitate existing athletic fields, such as resurfacing basketball courts of Peroni Park. And I hope I'm saying that right. I think it's Peroni, not Perone, but someone correct me if I'm misspeaking. prioritize funds for the acquisition of land near Sandy Pond Beach to be used for public access and boat launch. And then the community housing goals, there are 3. Prioritize CPA funds to help achieve the state's 10% goal per Chapter 40B, including through adaptive reuse of existing buildings. And we didn't specifically say historic preservation here, but this could also be through a historic preservation project as an example. The second one, support efforts to preserve expiring uses. So there are existing affordable housing units that have expiring terms, and so they could go to market rate. And so CPA funds have been used in other communities in the state to really help to preserve those so that that they can remain affordable housing and remain contributing to your 10% goal under 40B. And then the third one, continue to fund and expand a rental assistance program, which you are already doing. And then historic preservation goals, prioritize CPA funds for adaptive reuse of historic buildings in town that could be used as a community center. Support the digitization, continued digitization really, of historic documents to preserve the original copies and protect historic homes from the threat of new development or even significant renovation that would, compromise the historic integrity of the resource through acquisition of the fee, meaning buying the property, or through a preservation restriction, buying a restriction. And of course, these are all voluntary negotiated. And so that's the idea there. All right, and that's everything. And I'm happy to either leave this up, but I'm also happy to take it down if it's taking up too much of the Zoom screen here. So Janet or others, please let me know what you'd prefer.
I mean, right now, keep it up just in case people have a question with regards to one of the slides.
All right.
Okay, I think, that was a good presentation. It went through pretty much the basics of what the plan is, and what's, generated in that. I know that I just have just a couple things with regards to the document itself. Like really not couple, really just one. I didn't even notice that on the that map. So I'm glad that, you brought that one up even closer. So I'm gonna pass it on to the group. Anybody on the committee have any questions or anything else like that? I'm looking around. I've got Colleen shaking her head. Jess, no. Barry, you're all set?
Are we gonna, I mean, I know that this was mostly on the goals, but I did have a question on the page in the document regarding historic preservation needs and resources. If this isn't the time yet, I can wait until.
Yeah, I guess my Janet, I'll look to you as chair, but my feeling is if there's a detail, any inaccuracies or typos or formatting issues, you can just send us that on the side. I don't think you need to vote on that. It's just a Scribner, some kind, I would put that in the same category, but I guess I would be more directive of, directing your comments toward more policy issues. That's why we really focused on those goals. And I know you want to hear from the public too, but that's what I would focus on.
Okay, no, I think that sounds good. I know that we did receive some feedback, that we sent to you, and now that everybody's had a chance probably to go through the document even more, I will send you whatever type of updates that they go ahead, as as long as there's nothing major. Barry, was there anything major?
Nothing really major, no, but in the section where you have 18th century, 19th century, and 20th century, excuse me, there was some errors that I see in there that I didn't pick up. And when my colleagues on the historical commission did pick up, and I just wanted to kind of clarify a couple and take some wording out, that's all. And I can send that to you, Janet, and
Please.
forward it to you.
All right, that sounds great. I think that works out well. I didn't know whether or not Colleen, Julie, Jason, do you have anything, like say with regard to the presentation? I think the goals are very straightforward.
Yeah.
We knew that we wanted to focus in on the different other documents and make sure that we were trying to implement the items that those other documents were pushing for. So.
I think everything looks great. I thought the goals were excellent.
Mhm. Julie?
I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, okay. I gather I haven't heard anything from Jason. We do ask, okay, the public, if there's any type of public comment. I know that, again, we've got individuals from NOAA as well. If they've got anything, I know that they see probably the 40B and affordable housing, so they're smiling right now, knowing that that's one of our goals. Anybody else from the public? I got that thumbs up. Great. Thanks, Jason. Anything from the public? The documents themselves are out on the website for the community preservation, so that you can go ahead and take a look at the draft document, like I said, the final draft, as well as Jen, with regards to this presentation, if you can make that change, to the map, as well as breaking up those four,
Sure.
I think it would be great if you can get us the presentation, and I will put, I'll make sure that I send it to Cindy, and Cindy will put it on the website, so that if people do have any other additional,
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And it might not be till next week, just because I need Delaney to change the map. And I know she has a huge workload right now. Delaney's leaving, by the way. You
Oh,
guys
I'm
are not
sorry.
affected by that, but I'm having her just finish a whole bunch of stuff up before she leaves. So she's kind of swamped. And that's why I thought, she doesn't really need to be here tonight. But yeah,
Nope.
I think as long as you're okay if we do that next week, I just think the next couple days for her are pretty busy. And we're happy to, make any edits as well if you want to send them along. I'm actually going to be out of town next week. So, but as long as you could either get them to me immediately and I might be able to get them done this week. But if you don't get to them till next week, I'll be back on the 22nd and we can make any revisions after that as well.
Okay, I believe as long as we can have, like, say, a final document, for our September meeting, that will be well. So I'll get the feedback from Barry, and if Beth has anything, we'll get that all to you so that you can work on it. Tell Delaney, thank you very much. We wish her the best. I know it's bittersweet.
It is. She's decided that she really, even though she has a planning degree, she would really prefer to do only mapping, which, my office does lots of stuff, including mapping, but we're such a small operation that we need folks that are really able to do lots of different things. But she's going to go to the city of Boston to do mapping work for the BPDA. And so she's not going to do any planning or policy work anymore, just GIS work. But that's what she really wanted to do after kind of trying out planning with me for a while.
All right, well, excellent. At least now she's got well-rounded of finding out what people use it for, she'll be able to.
That's true. That's right. That's right.
All right, well, like I say, tell her we wish her the best. And if there's nothing else from the public, I'm gonna go ahead and we're not going to, like I say, approve it until we get you those edits and everything. But I think we can close the public hearing and saying, I think this was very successful. Does anybody else have any comments or anything? All right, then can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, Barry,
And it.
Colleen seconds, and I gather, I gotta go through the roll call. So Julie,
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Okay, Barry,
Yes.
Colleen,
Aye.
Jess?
Aye.
And the chair says, yes, I don't know. All right, so with that, it's all in favor. Jen, thank you very much. We'll be back in touch. And again, awesome work. This was really good to put together. So
Thank you. Well, I was so glad you brought us back after so many years of doing the plan a long time ago. And it was really lovely to see, old familiar faces as well as meet some new folks, and always a pleasure. So if you need any other planning work, let us know. We do master plans, housing plans, community preservation plans, visioning, community engagement. So I'll sign off, but yeah, I'll look for your emails and just copy both me and Delaney in case I'm out of office next week. When you get them, then Delaney could probably get a head start on that before I get back.
All right, and the other individual that you had on the slide who was not available for tonight, it would be good to include her as well in the email.
You don't have to. Delaney's going to be with me until August 26th. So
Okay.
I think that you'll be getting the comments in way before that anyway.
Excellent. All right, sounds
All right.
great. Thank you.
Thank you,
very much.
everyone.
Thanks for all your hard work there, Jen.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, so public hearing has been closed, so now we're going to, if there's nothing else that people want to go ahead and bring up with regards to the plan, I think, like I say, I think it's pretty well. Make sure, Barry, when do you think you'll be able to get the
I'll
feedback?
get it to you this week.
All right, excellent.
I'll
That
get it
sounds
to you
great.
before the end of the week.
Okay, and my only comment was, they put in that eligibility chart. However, I really would like a link to the coalition site that has the definitions for each one of those categories. Because when people look at it and say, I've got a question, what does it mean by rehab? If you had the link there, then, I mean, I wanted a little more information, but at least if the link is there, it can go to it. So that was really my only other feedback with regards to the document. Jess, thank you very much for your feedback. I really do appreciate that as well. All right, so I'm gonna move on now to new business, seeing that we've got Phil here with his group with NOAA. Thank you very much. I think everybody, I do have the application I did send to everybody from NOAA. It doesn't have anything to do with an ark. I heard the NOAA ark got flooded. The one that's in, was it Kentucky or Tennessee or something like that? It got.
I think all of Kentucky looked like it got flooded. That was quite unfortunate, actually, of course. So,
Yeah.
It was
know.
the
Yeah.
road that got damaged.
It was what?
It was the road that got damaged.
Okay, I heard something, but
I had a post on that on Facebook, and Facebook corrected me for partial incorrect information.
okay. Uh-oh. So, but now, I'll let you go ahead and introduce everybody. This, is with regards to the 40B, request that's over on Fitchburg Road. This is the initial, request so that the team gets to go ahead and review it. And one thing I did want to bring up beforehand, we did, have a meeting with, or we're going to have an upcoming meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust and Committee, that there are 40Bs already within our community, and I want to make sure the community was aware of it, that when you look at Autumn Ridge and the Willows over off of Willow Road, there are 40B units already in town. So when people question, if they do have any type of question, again, this is just a Massachusetts guideline, Massachusetts general law, and it's called a 40B, but it's just for affordable housing. And it's an initiative that the town does want to take to make sure that we can have affordable housing in the community. So I wanted to put that in there first before I turn it over to Philip and his group. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, or Janet. I think Annika Lambert is here. She was running an emergency errand and I hopefully will appear shortly, but I'm also joined by Sharon Lowenthal, who does our numbers for us in a very fine way, and I appreciate that. And I know we've met some of you before, if not everybody. It's nice to be back in town. We've had a number of meetings, this past year or so, actually, and things have been proceeding very nicely. And it's nice to know that, having just seen Jen Golden's presentation, and we know Jen from other communities and her fine work, that we might fit into a couple of your primary goals for building and preserving building housing for families, seniors, and whoever actually have any particular background on the affordable side. So we could end up building as many as 106 units in the community over the next several years. Actually, it'll take a while to do all this, of course. But we met that goal. We also have 4 acres of wetlands, which attach to our site, which we're happy we don't need, happy to preserve. That I think helps assist in the ecology. of the town as well. So you may or may not have trails around there. I'm not quite sure, but I think those two goals are important. And again, the housing is open to everyone. So I think the multiple goal or overlapping pieces that I think I saw in one of the priorities, Janet, is also something that we meet in our particular request. So with that as a start, I don't have the entire application in front of me. I'm hoping that Annika does and will appear shortly. But again, we've been meeting with people in town. We had our first hearing with the ZBA a couple of weeks ago. Our next one is next week. And then peer reviews will occur for a variety of activities that are required to be undertaken in our friendly 40B process. So I'm not sure how the other 40Bs approach the town, but ours is what they call friendly, which is what we want to work with you. Projects are better by talking to officials and people in town, and you'll learn more and in lots of different ways. So, we're happy to do that. The ZBA process, we're hoping will end at the end of December, which by way for our ability and maybe for your own as well, that enables us to put in applications to the state in this winter round. If we slip past December, then we may have to wait as long as 9 months or a year to reapply. So we're hoping that we can meet town process and guidelines and deadlines as we go through this comprehensive approach. As I think the chairman stated last time, that they have a lot to learn. I think he said they haven't really done this kind of in-depth work before, but we're providing expert advice, and you'll have expert advice to go through it, or the town will. So it'll take a while. It'll be a quick march from our short sleeve work right now to the codes of winter, which come too quickly actually. But here we are. So again, we're seeking a variety of funds to help supplement the first phase anyway of our application. We would benefit from $400,000 if that's what you can afford to do this. It's about a $30 million project, or first phase one. Sharon can give you the exact number if she'd like to. So there's if you were to think of how your money, which is large, no question about it, supports the development, the leverage factor is actually quite large. So your 400,000, if you think of it leveraging 30 million or almost 30 million, you're going to do a lot. The town has every application that goes into the state, for those who don't know, sort of require a town commitment, not just the project eligibility letter. You guys are good luck, good luck to you. They sort of say, we'll put some skin in the game on this thing. And some towns have CDBG, some have home consortium, some have some other of their own cash, or their fees, that kind of thing. So the state also requires, a meaningful amount of money for a project when they take these in. So we've had probably 5 or 6 CPA requests, projects throughout the state, as much as 1.3 million in North Andover to about 900,000 in a couple of projects in Holliston, or one project we went back a couple of times for that, and more, in significant dollars that do come in from towns that want to see their projects built in an affordable and collaborative way, which we want to do with you. So that's our request in this round. And again, we're going to continue to work with the town throughout the process to make it shape the way you'd like it and the way we think it could and should be built. It'll look great along Fitchburg Road. It's going to certainly set a precedent up there. And I know people have been saying this could lead to other actions and activities that would make Fitchburg Road a more inviting place for future development, if that's what the town wants to see, and we think it does. So it could be mass works, it could be housing as well that moves up in that direction. So I think I'm going to stop right now, Janet, and maybe take questions, or if I've forgotten something significant, Annika can pitch in, but happy to take your questions, happy to be here and keep talking with you throughout this process. Thank you.
You're muted.
I was trying to find the application just in case. So with that, but Annika's here, so I don't have to do that.
I'm so sorry. I was on the phone listening the entire time, but I did have to run an errand, so I was in my car and I was like fingers crossed listening to the very tail end of the presentation. I was like, oh, I can make this if we get this light, and of course you don't get the light. But I'm happy Phil was able to kick things off, and I actually am so happy that we are getting to follow such a great presentation. That you're right, it does highlight exactly what this project is hoping to achieve, and we do feel like we fit quite a few of your goals, both between the open space, the wetlands, as Phil mentioned, the recreational space. We will have parks. It's a community building. It's not just a building design for the residents. It's generally a community building, so it is and can be opened up to the greater Ayer population, as well as obviously affordable housing, which is something that what we do. It's the core of what NOAA does. So Janet, I'm happy to pull up drawings if you think it's helpful, or we can lead with specific questions you have based on the application. I can pull up the application, whatever you feel is easiest.
How about like right now, let's go ahead and do the application narrative that you went ahead and sent to us, and see if you can share it. If you can't share it, I have it. That's what I was looking for. This way here, we can give, again, the committee themselves, if they've gone ahead and reviewed it. But I think, go ahead, Jess.
Just double checking, we're, I'm assuming this will proceed forward from our vote tonight, but the next step would be to hold a public hearing in our next meeting in September.
Well, I mean, if this will be sufficient for, the application itself, then yes, we could go ahead and either do the public hearing it would be September, because we do want to present this to the fall town meeting, which would be the end of October. So, yes, Justin.
So I was just thinking in that sense, let's keep to what we need to focus on tonight to make that decision and save more of the detail for the public hearing presentation.
Okay, understood. That's why I thought this would be just good, instead of, going through the presentation that they made in ZPA, where you've got the description and all the buildings and everything else like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'll just add, Janet, that it helps us if we do have a decision by late October, then we can put it in the, the financing application that goes into the state as well. So that would be helpful.
Well, like I say, if this gets passed
Right.
after the public hearing in September,
Right.
that means you will be on the warrant articles
Yes.
for the October meeting, and I believe October 20-something.
24th, I believe.
All right, yeah, is the public hearing, or is the town meeting, and that will be a, plus and, whatever. But again, the town does need this for many reasons, especially to get to the 10%, because this will get us over the 10%. Go ahead. Let's
All right.
look at that narrative.
Yeah, so kind of just an overview of the project. We are specifically right now looking for funding for the phase 1 portion of the project, which creates 64 units of housing. All of those 64 units are eligible to count towards that 10%. When the project is complete, so there's 2 phases. Both phases will have built a total of 106 units with what we believe is sufficient parking. Obviously, the ZBA gets to decide exactly about the parking, but what we believe is sufficient parking to support all 106 units. And all of those units are attributable to that 10% threshold. All of the units will be less than 70% AMI. 70% AMI would be the 21 workforce housing units. And then we will have a decent chunk of units that are with that 50 or below AMI threshold. So I believe in phase 1, we have 16 that are the section 8 MRBP units. So those are the 30%, the absolute kind of lowest tier of affordability. So, sometimes they're occasionally, I don't want to like confuse people with vernacular, but sometimes it's, quote unquote home units, which are, set aside for homeless units, et cetera. So it's that extremely low income 30% threshold. We have about 16 units in that, and then another 6 units below 50% AMI. And then the remaining units are 60 or 70%. So it's a very it's a high threshold because these are all calculated with the Boston Cambridge AMI, meaning you're looking at the Boston area area median income, which kind of inflates the number a little bit. So anybody making, less than 50% of that Boston area median income is eligible for these units, or even less than 70%. So it's I don't have the specific numbers for that, but it's a high number. I can assure you these will be certainly affordable for very many people in Ayer. So you can see our unit mix of the 64 units. We do have predominantly 2 bedrooms, but we do have a handful of 3-bedroom units. And then obviously there will be future another 42 units of housing provided in phase 2, which we do hope will be breaking ground about 2 to 3 years following phase 1. So as a whole, I won't read off of this, but our goal and our primary objective, and our architect has done a fantastic job of working through the kind of overall design and the feel of the community that is Ayer, and really drawing from a lot of the existing characters. So these will not be buildings that have a back to the street. These will have a sort of a front to the street on Fitchburg Road, simultaneously having a front that is facing the sort of center of the community. So this is going to be designed to create a community feel within the complex itself, within the site itself, but at the same time not neglect Fitchburg Road. And it will be intentionally designed and landscaped so that you do have the pleasing facade as if it was a row of houses. The front side, sorry, there's a lot of music coming from this street right next to me. I live in the city and it is always exciting here. But the front 5 buildings will be a row of townhouses. So it will kind of stay consistent with, the look as you drive through Ayer. It won't be a very rectangular apartment building going up right on the street edge. It'll look and feel like a townhouse or just a single family home right on the street edge. There won't be, or at least right now, it's not planned to have a fence. I know that came up in some previous meetings we've had, where, will it be fenced off? Will it feel very isolated and separate? And that's currently not the intention. We won't have a sort of big fence up in front of anything. It'll be very, very welcoming and inviting. We hope it'll kind of just blend and mesh with the existing landscape. But more importantly, this will definitely bring a change to the existing industrial commercial section that this building is planned to go into. So it's, obviously right now zoned for business and industrial. So it's a little bit of a different feel from that, but we hope that this helps to kind of push Ayer in a future direction where there's opportunity to continue expand along Fitchburg Road and beyond, and start to elevate that area as a whole, where it does become more desirable for more housing in the future, or at the very least, more business types versus just industrial. So we do anticipate having solar within this project as well. The project is going through Passive House in addition to hoping to install solar. So we do hope that this is a very green forward building, a very, climate friendly building. That is certainly our intention and our goal, and something that we do hope will go along very nicely with the preservation of the wetlands and stay along the goals of the CPA, and as far as just general ecological preservation. So goals of the project, obviously we've kind of touched on these. Affordable housing is the biggest one, the most important goal. The 106 units will contribute to the 10%, and then further than that, we are protecting the wetlands and then the few endangered species on site and creating just green, energy efficient buildings. And who benefits? Ayer is the residents of Ayer will directly benefit. Residents of the nearby communities that work in Ayer will directly benefit. People just outside of Ayer will benefit. The habitats, the ecosystems will benefit. So this is something that can certainly, benefit a lot of different people, but first and foremost, it does benefit the residents of Ayer. So I'll gloss over how success will be measured, but obviously if this is something that contributes to your 10%, we get you over that threshold, I'd say that's pretty successful. If the project maintains its, affordability and its credentials for the long haul, I'd say that's pretty successful. If we meet Passive House, that's definitely successful. But So we've touched on the community criteria. And I do just want to kind of zoom in on that one statistic. So roughly 73% of the site will remain as open space once both phases are completed. So that is a very large chunk of that, 10 and a half acre site. 73% of the site, it effectively means the entire section north of the wetlands. So everything that we are building, phase 1 and phase 2, is all happening southwest of the wetland. So this is the closest part to Fitchburg Road, just a little bit above Fitchburg Road, set back into the site will be phase 2. But everything beyond the wetlands, and we've got 100-foot buffer zones on either sides of those, that'll be completely open space. So any of the existing residences, so, Isaac's Lane and the communities, I think it's the Groton School community, any of those existing communities that border the back of the site, the rear of the site, where there's lots of existing trees and woods and things, that's all going to stay intact. We don't have any current plans to make any changes or alterations to that. The one thing we'll be doing is running sewer out that direction, but that's a minimal impact, and we do intend to keep as many trees and keep everything is existing in its existing state as possible. So it'll certainly prioritize open space. And then just to touch on the recreation, I know I mentioned, this is a project that will contribute to one of, the recreational goals. So we will have a playground planned on site as well as a dog run. Those things will both take place in phase 1. So these are, immediate future goals that is being worked towards right now, not a future phase 2 or anything like that. We will have a playground and dog run. So we understand why this is definitely a benefit as far as the affordable housing goes. We've talked about the 10% a bunch already, so I won't continue to say that. But in addition to the residents of Ayer that will apply for the housing, you can actually see benefits directly for residents of Ayer during the construction of this project, because we will have goals for local hiring for our general contractor, meaning people of Ayer that are seeking labor jobs or seeking construction jobs. We do have sort of a minimum threshold we're trying to meet. I don't know the number offhand, I apologize. But we will be prioritizing local labor for this project. So this is something that if there is a community within Ayer that does construction, local labor, we will be seeking that out as part of our construction. So this is not just something that you wait till it gets built for people to benefit. No, this is an immediate benefit that happens during the construction process of this, which it'll take time. It is not a quick build, so it's definitely something to look forward to as well. And beyond that, this does, obviously meeting the 10%, it does help Ayer qualify for other grants. I think infrastructure is something that was discussed previously. So this is something that if you can meet that 10%, it does have other benefits in the future, in the long run, for greater Ayer as a whole, whether it's MassWorks or other infrastructure type, industries. This is something to look forward to. And I did briefly kind of discuss the idea of, Ayer's form-based code, and just the general fact that, your form-based code does kind of focus on the street relationship. And that is something that our architect is super mindful of. And so I do hope that this does lend to meeting that kind of general vision for Ayer and what Ayer hopes to be in the future. Just the few times I've been downtown, it's adorable. It's this really cute downtown. And obviously this will hopefully continue that trend throughout once you start to break away from from town center. I know most towns, once you get away from town center, it gets a little bit different. It changes its landscape. So hopefully this can kind of hold together some of that, initial thoughtfulness in the planning. And then let's keep going down here because we've talked about those benefits already. So again, more about the income levels and the affordability. I think that's the biggest thing that we can contribute here. So that is definitely the biggest part of our narrative. And then just to dive into briefly the wetlands and then the endangered species. So there's 2 endangered species on site, one of which is blanding turtles and one is the climbing fern. So the climbing fern is there. I think we found a few instances of those on site. So that's being protected by a 75-foot buffer. So that's within the 100-foot buffer of the wetlands already. So it is well protected. And the other species we did find on site was a blandings turtle. So believe it or not, we don't actually have the ecosystem to really support a Blandings turtle. They happen to exist here, but it's not the environment that they would typically thrive in. So this isn't necessarily something that we are trying to encourage, and there's more work to obviously be done as we discover the best way to handle this habitat that currently exists within the wetlands there. But should there be any future planning down the line, where whether it's an extension of the, I think it's DHCD owned Isaac's Lane properties, or anything north of the wetlands that exists on the property, should we do any kind of connection that crosses the wetlands, that's when the concerns for the Blandings turtle kind of come into play, and we'll have to be just mindful to create sort of a crossing for any creatures that currently exist on there. So that the protections for the Blandings turtle really come into effect if we do future planning where there is a connection, like a roadway or something, between the southern portion of the site and the northern portion of the site that crosses the wetlands. So it's something that's in the future, but again, we are constantly continuing to sort of learn more and evaluate on this. And I know that there's lots of discussions that take place about habitats and climate and preservation and stuff. So there's a lot more to learn and be discussed. So it's evolving, but that's kind of what exists currently. So, and I did mention the kind of 73% or 78% open space on site, but 65% of the site is undeveloped, completely untouched. And that's everything north of the wetlands, even though we will have additional open space within the developed portion, about 65% is largely untouched.
Mhm.
So community support, I mean, this can't be understated. There's been a lot of support throughout the community. We are specifically getting a lot of support towards our endeavor of the 40B comprehensive permit. We received quite a few letters more directly related to a specific endeavor within that 40B, which is obtaining a waiver to allow us to benefit from the full acquisition price. I won't get into it on this call. It's not super relevant to what this goal is, but there has been a lot of support generated just for that endeavor. So that again translates throughout. We are going to reach out and see if we can get a slightly more general letter of support that supports the project as a whole and is something that's relevant directly to the CPA. So we'll have that hopefully for next meeting. But as of right now, I have a bunch of letters of support. They're just very specifically referencing a particular issue we're trying to address within DHCD. So not relevant to this, but there is a lot of support that exists within the community and beyond, as well as just the general committees we presented to have all been relatively supportive, which is why we're here, obviously. So thank you again to everyone that we have been working with. It is very appreciated. So I know the budget this is a big topic, so I am happy to have Sharon Lowenthal, our consultant, who does kind of lead the charge with all of the numbers for the project. We are obviously still in the early stages. This isn't something we anticipate getting into construction until about 2024, the earliest. So, it's about 2 years out. We will likely see an increase in construction costs between now and then. We'll likely see an increase in soft costs between now and then, and who knows where things will be. So these numbers are preliminary and definitely reflected in today's dollars. So we did have a construction estimate done by a general contractor out of Harvard, Mass, LD Russo. They provided us with a very kind of realistic look of, roughly call it you could be up to around $300 a square foot. So that would put us to right around 21.8 million for construction costs alone. That's a pretty large number. Obviously, what we're requesting from the CPA is $4,000, and most of that, I believe, would be attributed to the construction hard costs, which are all eligible costs for this project. But our overall total development cost, or TDC, if I end up saying that, that's what that means. We're looking at about $32 million for the total project, and that's just the phase 1 portion. There's obviously a phase 2 that would come in the future, but for phase 1, 32 million is kind of where we're targeting right now. So I can pause here and take questions specifically on the budget or any of the kind of previous narrative and introductions I've gone through. This is probably a good spot to take a minute and kind of address anything that's come up, and I'll let Sharon speak if there's something more specific that needs to be addressed as well.
Well, Anika, I think that Anika, this sounds really really good. I One of the things that I do want to emphasize is it's not only for Air residents, but also people who can't live in Air but work in Air. They're able to go ahead and possibly have an affordable unit that they can now live close to where they work, because many of the individuals here within the town can't live within the town. And, sad to say, many of them do want to. So I think that is helpful. And knowing that the request of the 400,000 for CPA funds allows you to get leverage from other type of grants that are available. So I think, that's one thing that, we need to keep emphasizing of CPA funds are definitely a great leverage for that, because it shows not only community support, for a letter, but also funding, from the town. So that was just my two comments. Anybody else on the committee have any questions, or
I do.
go ahead?
This is Jess. I think it's a great project. My only question is talking about, I'm also on the Conservation Commission and the ZBA, so you'll be seeing me. But
Yeah.
my only question would be that wetland portion of the project, and that is it 65% that won't be touched at all.
Yes, correct.
Any possibility of having that protected as open space?
So I believe that's a great question. So I think if this is more of a technical question, I suppose the techniques of how we protect it versus it technically will be protected through the work that we're doing, as in it's in the buffer zone, it's not touched. Are you specifically asking if we can go through certain steps in order to, like, by name protect that specific area of land, or is it just generally protected as of what we're doing?
I was thinking more like even, something like a conservation restriction or something
Yeah.
like that.
Absolutely. So if I can, let me just very quickly pull up our site drawing, and then I can kind of help talk through this. So the area, so it stretches onto 2 pages because it's actually so large, but this is the area right here that is, this is Isaac's Lane, this little cul-de-sac right down here. This area up here is outside the wetland buffer zone, but it's completely open and undeveloped. So this is land that could be developed technically, but not being developed as part of the project. When I mentioned that wetland buffer, or the buffer, the crossing, that would go over the large 100-foot buffer zone that we have. So this dash line right here, and then this upper dash line over here, with the wetlands kind of existing in the middle, that crossing would have to extend, through there should the potential future development take place up here. We connected it to the property below, that would be kind of where that would take place. So we have had some very preliminary discussions about the possibility of working with the town to either donate that land back to conservation and say, this is something that you can have, you can do what you'd like with, we don't need it as part of the property. There's also been some conversation around expanding Isaac's Lane and that development there and what that could look like. So if that were to happen, and obviously that would be where the access road takes place, the wetlands themselves, if that would be of interest to conservation to take ownership of, everything kind of within that, I guess I would say probably maybe not the 100-foot buffer zone, but if there's like a tighter line, just because we will have a very small portion of our property extending into the 100-foot buffer zone. So if that is something that would be of interest, absolutely, I would say let's continue that conversation and discussion, and we can work towards making strides to, technically protect that land. I think that would be a, just a huge win just for the project and then also for conservation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else from anybody else?
Yep, I have a question.
Okay, Barry?
I you have 5 units along Fitchburg Road, 4 of which are the same dimensions, and then you have one larger one. How many units in each one of these buildings?
It's a great question. So if I pull up my architecturals here. So these are each, you can see the elevations and then the floor plan as well. So we have about 4 units per floor for the smaller ones, and they're each 2 floors apiece. So that's about 8 units right there. So that'll be 8, 8, 8, 8, and then even multiplex C, which is the 3-family, is 8 units. So those 5 will have 8 units, and then the larger one that exists in the back makes up the remaining quantity. So if I do some really quick math, that's about 40 through the front, and then the remaining 24 units are existing in the bigger building behind.
And for
So you're saying the building on the left, Annika, has some 3 bedrooms in it that the other buildings don't, is that correct?
That's correct. So multiplex C has I believe all of our 3 bedrooms. These front 5 buildings. So if I go through, multiplex B has 2 bedrooms, multiplex A has 1 bedrooms. So if I zoom in on this chart, so you can see right here, multiplex A, and then we have B, another B, and then another A. So it'll go 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom, with the 3 bedrooms being to the left over here.
And that's 2 separate levels, is that correct?
They're each 2 stories, correct?
Not each unit, but the building itself is 2
Oh,
stories.
correct. Yes. Yep. Each building is 2 levels. The units themselves are a single level.
All right, thank you.
Yes. And I know Jeff had his hand up as well.
Madam Chair, Jeffrey here.
Yes, Jeff.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on Jess's request, comments about the possibility of going into some sort of conservation restriction. Yeah, we talked about this briefly at the last meeting we were at. And good evening, Phil and Annika. Nice to see you all again. But there is a possibility, Jess, that you may not be aware of, that there might be a way of connecting to the sewer out of on Isaac as opposed to going out onto Fitchburg Road.
Yeah.
And I
know
don't know
about
if you, okay, well, I was curious if there was, if that happened, there would be an easement. There may or may not be an easement for that, which actually would maybe an allowable way to connect the front of the property, the back of the property for green space and help get it into green space that we can conserve forever. Be nice. I just thought I would throw that out. I don't know the ramifications of it right now. I don't know the property at all, but that was just something I was thinking about as you mentioned it.
Yeah.
That might be the bridge. That might be the bridge to the back that brings it all together.
I'm kind of happy you mentioned it. So I'll focus on this drawing for a moment here. This is an existing sewer line that appears to go from the property over here, this Riley Road property, down to the Isaac Lane properties. It cuts across the back of the site. So that is an existing kind of easement that is already presently there for sewer. This is the line we do anticipate tapping into for the project. So we would actually be doing a, there's, I think, a planned sewer drain, you know, roughly where this S is on this drawing here. And that would be the drain or the manhole that we would create for the project. And we would tap in by going underneath the wetlands and then to that existing location. So there isn't any existing sewer on the Fitchburg Road end of the property for us to tap into. I believe the closest point is about 2,000 feet down the road. It's kind of closer to one of the grocery stores that's over there. So for us to take that on would be state permits. Obviously Fitchburg Road is Massachusetts and not just town-based. So we'd have to get into a lot bigger permitting. It's a little bit more money. So it's something that, you know, we've considered and we can certainly have more discussions on, but the anticipation right now is to actually utilize a connection point from that Isaac's Lane. So if that is still kind of related to what you were asking, Jeff, where it's helpful for that kind of connection point to bridge things and actually protect this land, it's a great starting point for a conversation so that we can see what's possible.
Let me. I think I've heard from staff or others that there could be a MassWorks application that ran the sewer line up Fitchburg Road, which would benefit from the presence of a 40B or affordable housing in the application process. So MassWorks is a competitive process. I think the town has benefited in the past. It doesn't get one every year. Nobody does. But if the sewer line did get extended up that way, because that was a town priority, having Ayer Commons as a project the town was already supporting would enhance the MassWorks application. So, and then having just the sewer extended to Fitchburg Road would probably benefit everybody as opposed to running up Isaac Lane and through the wetland itself.
I definitely expect we'll have more conversations with Jess about conservation, both between ZBA, Conservation Committee. It'll be a very hot topic of discussion. So, and even then, I do think helpful to sort of take offline and figure out what is best for the project overall and what benefits the town most. So we will be reaching out. We will have lots of discussions about it in the coming weeks, I'm sure.
This is Janet, back again. I know that when I saw you at the zoning meeting, again, I just want to reiterate, because I'm on the housing authority, is that you've got to make sure that if you touch anything like around Isaac Lane, that is owned by DHCD. So I hope I think you've been in touch with Ken Martin, over there, so that you may know what type of steps, because I know sometimes it may take several months for DHCD to get back in touch. All right, so again, I know the project's going to take a while to start working on it, but if you're going to be going there, be sure to set yourself up for some time.
Yes.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else from anybody? All right. Annika, go ahead. If there's anything else.
All right. So if there's no specific questions to the budget or funding or anything like that, I can gloss over this super quickly. Like we said, total development cost of 32 million. We're requesting 400,000. Our sources will be, plentiful. This is certainly the 400,000 is not the only source we're seeking. And all of these other funding sources, with the exception of the Passive House grant, are things to be applied to. So we will be applying to DHCD for, either the mass housing loan, we'll apply for the workforce loan, the various kind of alphabet, if you will, from DHCD will apply to all of those. The home funds in particular will trigger a environmental review that's completed through HUD, and that is just for the clearance of federal funds. So that's something we'll also try to coordinate with the town, and hopefully maybe attempt this summer or this fall. I guess summer's nearly over. So it's on our list of things to do. And then obviously the low-income housing tax credits and state low-income housing tax credits are things that would also be applied for to generate equity for the project. The Passive House grant is something that we achieve through the various review we do with Passive House. We've completed the first round. There are 3 total rounds, so it's an involved process that will continue as the project develops more. We are not pausing it, but it's stalled a little bit until we continue through ZBA, just because if there's any changes to the design of the project, it'll impact Passive House. So for the second round, we need a slightly more complete construction set. So it's future to come, but all of those sources are anticipated, not yet committed at all towards the project, but just things that we do believe we should be able to receive. So again,
I'll just amend, friendly amendment to Annika's comment. When I heard her say plentiful, I go, oh my gosh, there's never really enough. And so the subject to change, you're watching things happen with inflation, interest rate changes, which are going up now. So we're subject to the vagaries of the financial markets and whatever else comes out of Congress, good, bad, otherwise, that these are where things are right now. Who knows what's going to be in 2 or 4 years from now. So you might say, why is this 2.1 turned into 6 million or something? It's not going to happen like that, but it's not plentiful. They're just what we can get. Massachusetts is a very generous state. We're very grateful for everything that comes our way, and it enables us to do these kind of projects, but things do shift around. You notice the legislature didn't pass the housing budget, I think, this round. I think the governor will still get to that at some point in time, but things happen like that to throw things off. So just a sort of a friendly caution right now, and hopefully it'll be plentiful, but they never really are.
Yes, and I will also say, especially the mass housing, just the way they calculate all of their loans, it is pretty volatile depending on what the Fed is doing. So it changes daily. It's having an effect on other projects. Obviously, the 10 million is one that we thought we could achieve when we initially kind of put these assumptions together, and they always need to have a refresh as we move closer to our anticipated date for financial closing. But again, so this category for funding, these are all things that will be applied for, and obviously having the kind of commitment of local funds is a huge point of assistance as we do apply for those funding. So the local commitment generally comes first before we can be eligible for all of the sources listed above, in addition to the 40B approval. So for our timeline, it's a huge question. And when we realistically think that we can get shovels in the ground on this project. So I've listed it out here, so you can take your time digesting it at your own leisure, but just on the super broad overview, kind of where we are right now this summer, fall 2022, where we're doing the 40B comprehensive permit process. We will hopefully start the HUD review for the environmental funds, or sorry, the federal funds, the obviously CPA applications, and then what we hope will be our very first sort of application to the DHCD winter round. So for those not familiar, and I believe I've mentioned on these calls before, so stop me if everyone's heard it, but DHCD does their funding rounds about once per year. And if you are denied funding, but a highly ready project, sometimes you're invited to a mini round, which is kind of like your second chance within a calendar year to get funded. So the first step of that is completing a pre-application to DHCD, and that happens sometime, it's like September, October. So we'll hopefully have an indication from you all for, fingers crossed, maybe the 40B, at least a general support, or at least a general feeling for CPA money. And that helps bolster our pre-application, and the pre-application determines our eligibility for an application in the winter. Now, the application in the winter is this massive application that goes in. There's a lot of content and questions that need to be answered. So we will, work to achieve that goal as much as it is an endeavor to take on. It's one I hope I get to take on in January. So we will know usually around November, December, if we're invited to apply in January. So that's what we hope will happen this coming fall, winter, is that hopefully in early January, I will be putting together a massive one-stop application, and we will then wait to hear until around June if we are funded or not, or if we're invited to apply for a mini round. Now, if we are not invited in the winter, obviously we have to sit tight and wait until our next sort of opening, and that could be as late as next fall, so the fall of 23, or potentially if they decide to open up an additional round within the summer, which I believe we're trying to do this year. It wasn't one that we were eligible for, so I didn't pay too much attention to it, but there is a potential that DHCD does create an additional opening for funding, so something we can apply to in the summer if it works out that way. So they're trying to generate abilities for projects, but it's always a little bit of a waiting game. So running with the assumption that we are able to get into that round in the winter, it is unlikely, unfortunately, that we will be funded in that first round, as projects are more often than not funded in your very first application. But the goal of the application is not to necessarily funded, but for DHCD to review the project, for them to give us feedback, to have eyes on it so that they know it's real, it's coming, and then it does make future applications a lot easier. So the most realistic scenario here is that we are not funded in the winter round for 2023, but we are instead funded in the mini round during what would technically be 2024. So this would mean we apply the winter of 2024, and we aren't funded then, but then allowed to apply for a mini round in the summer of 2024. That application, we would, fingers crossed, here by the beginning of probably the fall of 2024, and we can move into construction, loan closing, financial closing, and then fingers crossed, get into construction and have a project open up sometime in the spring of 2026. That's kind of the most realistic expectation here, is that we will have a new building, or multiple buildings, sorry, of affordable housing sometime in end of this summer 2026 for lease up. That's what we expect. So it is a long endeavor, it's a long road, and we'll certainly be keeping you all apprised of it as we continue down it. But that's kind of the overview on schedule. If there's questions with that, I'm happy to answer. I know that that's very confusing. It's a confusing process, even just to try to articulate on a schedule. So I'm happy to dive into it.
Monica, can I just add again a friendly amendment
Yeah.
to the group that when we do housing in the public sector like this, it's probably 2 to 3 times as long as if it were just the private sector, because we have to wait for the variety of fundings that we get. We have to wait in line for others who are also doing very good work in the region. You probably can name a number of them yourselves, and then it takes a longer time to do the construction. So those things sometimes people say, gee, I know a certain firm that can do this a lot faster. Why can't you do that? It's just, we're in a very public process. It takes a long time to do that. A lot of eyes are on it to protect public value and investments that get made, and that doesn't go into our pockets or somebody else's pockets like that. So they're very carefully watched. It takes a long time to do it. We wish it were a lot faster, but it does take these 3 to 4 years to get these things done in the ground and occupied.
Yep, makes sense.
It's a long road, but it'll be very worthwhile.
Mhm.
So going past schedule and timing, obviously the question around maintenance. So the owner of Air Commons, which is an entity to be named, but NOAA is the managing partner / sponsor for the entity, will be responsible for all the maintenance and operational costs. We do have a projected operating expense budget that goes into our calculations for the deal as a whole, something Sharon can speak to better than I can, but so we do have these sort of assumptions and anticipations built in and baked in, obviously subject to change within the next couple of years before we get things working and get things going. But the CPA funds will not at all be added into the reserves that we have for ongoing maintenance of the project, et cetera. So this is not necessarily something to be concerned of, but certainly happy to take questions on our anticipated, operating budget, et cetera, to the extent that they're helpful.
I think, when you say CPA funds can't be used, and that's fine with us.
Simple as that. Yeah, it'll all come out of just the income for the project. So the rents are what support the ongoing operation of the project. So site control. This is actually a great thing to touch upon. It does have a point in the schedule that I glossed over. Our site control has us purchasing the property on or before March 30th of 2023. So this means we will be using an acquisition loan to take ownership and then hold onto the property until we're able to get a shovels in the ground and kind of continue things on from there. So we're doing things in a slightly different order than some affordable projects do, where they don't acquire until they have funding from DHCD, but that's okay. All things happen in their own way. So we will hope to become the quote unquote owners of the parcel early next spring. Contingent on our successful acquisition is the comprehensive permit being approved. So that is in part, as Jess knows, why it's super urgent for us to kind of nail all of these things down timing wise. A lot of lenders will not kind of grant you an acquisition loan if you don't have the zoning to support the project. So it's a little bit important for us there. So I did include.
But I just say it's so important that if we don't have zoning, we can't submit. It's really one of those sort of projects that are required before you submit it. The state says you can't control your site, you can't get funded. So they do require we have zoning approved.
Yes, so it is really, really important. But that is our means of site control at the moment. It's a purchase and sale agreement. It was provided in the packet. It's also within the ZBA documents that were submitted for the comprehensive permit. I can show the existing photographs of the site for those of you who are not familiar, if you give me a moment to pull those up. We've glossed through the architectural drawings and the site drawing briefly. I'm happy to dive into those more to the extent it's helpful. And then obviously zoning compliance will be the 40B comprehensive permit. It's not quite a catch-all for all permitting things. Obviously, we'll still need a building permit. And then I believe there's a whole host of environmental and conservation permits that we do have to also apply for, separate from the 40B. So let me pull up those existing site photos, because I've already kind of glossed over the potential MassWorks grant and just the kind of potential future goals for the northern portion of the site that's undeveloped. And then happy to again open for questions.
Okay, yeah, because even with the photos, like I say, we're going to make sure that we have that for the public hearing. Because my gut feeling from the committee is we definitely want to support the creation of affordable housing within the town, and you all have been so helpful, being a friendly nonprofit coming into town and working with the town. So I think that has been really helpful. So go ahead. With regards to the photos, I think people may be aware of where it is across the street from Shop and Save.
Just gonna change my my screen share here. Just give me a moment.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So that I'll just start with kind of what we envision and hope it to look like in the future. That you can see there's a large swath of land that will remain undeveloped. This is the future phase 2 that is just not erected in this rendering. And this is that small amount of parking area that I mentioned would kind of cross into the 100-foot buffer zone, but obviously not impede within the wetlands. So that is what we hope eventually it'll look like. This is kind of what it looks like today. See if I can get it to stay large. There we go.
Oh, gee, if you do this, if this project goes forward, you're going to be replacing all that beautiful existing scenic.
Yeah, something has to give, Jess, you're right.
The same for sure.
We can keep the trailer there if you want it for historic purposes, but
Oh, that would be, well, talk to Barry about that. He's historic.
okay, you can have the trailer, Barry, if you want it.
Existing.
Actually, I was looking at that old Quonset hut. That would be
You can have that too.
We could put it
Go
in
for
like
one.
a photo gallery, the photo gallery in the library. We could have like an exhibit.
Like that. I want the boat. Go ahead.
You have to take 5 tons of wood chips with you to do that too.
Yes, there will be. We've been informed that there should be some remaining debris on site. So to the extent it's helpful, perhaps if anyone's interested, please let us know.
The point is they're making us keep every bit of debris on the site as part of the PNS. They won't take it away. So it was a, let's say, difficult negotiation in the end. So we are gifted with all of this beauty, and you can take any of it you like.
Oh.
That's very kind of them. Yeah. They assured us that the boat would be gone though. Sorry about that. So I'll leave it on what we hope it to be in the future. So.
And the wetlands, really, the 9 acres in the back, 65%, that sort of doesn't show the proportion of the total of wetlands. So, it looks like 65% was the right number, give or take. A lot more green space back there, of course.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit of a cheating perspective here. So you don't get to appreciate just how vast it'll be back behind the wetlands, but intention is to keep it largely the same.
That's good. And one thing that I want to emphasize for those who are reviewing this video afterwards is that all these drawings and such are on the website, either the CPC's page on the Ayer, on Ayer, Town of Ayer's website, or on the zoning board. They both, zoning board would have more detailed, but we'd have the application, for being concerned with CPA funds. But definitely on the zoning board, you guys have a lot of, the documents and everything else out there. So want to make sure people were aware of that. Is there anything else that people would like to ask questions about, have any concerns? I'm
good.
Yeah, I'm hearing cricket, so, from the rest of the committee, and I don't think we have any more public contributors here. I'm gonna ask the committee, our next meeting would be September 7th. Is that too close to Labor Day?
I'll be here.
We got the
I'm
polls
listening.
on Tuesday, so I'll be here anyway, so,
Oh, really? Is that when we vote, on Tuesday?
yeah, primaries.
Wow, all right. Thank you, Barry. All right, so September 7th, do we want this to go to public hearing?
Annika, you could probably stop sharing now and then pull it down.
Sorry, it'll be easier.
Oh,
for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
There you go.
So can I have a motion to bring this to public hearing on September 7th?
I'll move to bring this project to CPC's next meeting on September 7th for public hearing.
For public hearing, all right, that was Jess.
And I'll second it.
All right, Colleen seconded. I saw that, and it's like, you're just getting ready to hear the second. It's like, okay. Let me do the roll call. Barry?
Yes.
All right, Colleen?
Aye.
Julie?
Yes.
What happened? Where's Jason? I don't have, you still here? Did he leave?
He's gone.
Yeah, he got dropped. Okay. All right. Jess?
I
All right, and the chair says aye. I think I got everybody. All right, the chair says aye. So, public hearing, set that up. I will go ahead and make sure that we set up the notification as well. Now, my question is, do we want to do this at 7 or do we want to try to do it at 6?
think we're probably likely to get more people at 7.
Yeah, I think so too. I know, like, I made that error on the agenda. So we'll do a 7 o'clock meeting and we'll start the go ahead, Colleen.
And we're still meeting by Zoom moving forward? Okay.
Yes, it will still be by Zoom, and the reason behind it is we still have the okay. I think the governor extended it until, was it March of next year?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll still do it by Zoom. I think that makes it easier for, for everybody. As long as, Phil, you and your group, that
No,
works.
we're
out.
happy to do that. Sometimes in person is nice to see people, but Zoom makes it so easy. We're happy to do that too, so.
Well, you're gonna be, you're gonna be seeing most of us either at zoning or at
Right.
conservation or planning. So,
No planning.
no
That's-
I
planning?
know for myself, my voice doesn't carry without Zoom. So it's helpful for me.
Okay, that works out.
I'm in that
All right.
club as well.
It's
All
not
right,
so
so 7 o'clock on the 7th. And one thing that I would make a recommendation is if you do have supportive documents, like some sort of letter, make sure that you have that with you, especially if it's from public safety. All right, if you've got something, because I know that has come up a few times of, okay, what's the impact that's going to happen with fire, police, possibly DPW, whatever, but definitely public safety. And I think that works out. And if that's it, then I think that's a great presentation. Definitely, thumbs up. So we'll see what other type of feedback we get in between.
looking forward to it. Please let me know if there's any questions that come up or anything that you think could be helpful for, the public hearing or anything that we should focus on or center things around. It's certainly helpful for me to not just run through the whole gamut again, but yeah.
Just Can I just jump in? Because I think this came up when you presented to the Affordable Housing Trust. Another question to anticipate, I think, is school buses and, impacts on the schools. So.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So we did get our traffic study as part of the ZBA material. So that's something we will be reviewing next week. For those of you interested in attending, you can get the first blush on that. So definitely something that I can try to prepare and preemptively kind of parse through to see if there's anything relevant. And certainly if things come up next week at the ZBA meeting, it'll definitely be a good precursor to kind of wedge into this presentation as well. But yes, absolutely mindful. And just as a general, we are currently meeting any needs of fire trucks to go through the property. So school buses in theory could meander through, although I don't know if that's the most efficient means. So maybe something we can discuss. But as far as roadways go, we are meeting minimums for fire trucks, which I think the school bus is roughly the same size, but I can confirm.
Oh, that sounds great. I know another question was regarding sidewalks, on Fitchburg Road.
Yeah.
But all right, if there's nothing else from the group, I do appreciate you guys showing up and.
It's good to be with you. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll see you.
Nice meeting you.
September 7th.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Great night.
Have a good summer.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yes,
Good
can
job, Annika.
I ask, Jess?
Yeah.
As we all kind of attend a lot of meetings, does ZBA need more citizen representation for this project at your meetings? Because I'm not planning on attending next week, but I'm happy with this project, and are those voices needed?
I know, I think down the road, yeah.
Okay.
That's always helpful. I know many members on the board are affected by public interest, displays of public interest. I know there are RFPs just about to go out or something to look at traffic, wetlands impact, civil engineering, and stormwater. So it's going to take a little bit of time for that to actually be completed. I don't anticipate, obviously, that will be done for next week. So, but ZBA is also going to be meeting by Zoom.
Okay.
So it'd be very easy to sit in at certain points. And down the road, I definitely would encourage it. This being August, take your break.
Don't mind giving us a little nod here and there as that time comes. I'd be happy to show up for that.
I think
Yeah,
always,
can you remind me of when they meet or when you meet.
we're the third Wednesday of every month at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I think for projects like this, though, I mean, always a show of public support at meetings is good. If you have to marshal your resources, I would say the meeting next week isn't quite so urgent.
Okay.
Colleen, I know that we've got the trust and the committee joint meeting on the 17th as well. And that, I believe, is going to take place at 4 o'clock.
The 17th, I reached out to Jeff today because I actually thought we had the meeting scheduled for today. So I was off. So it's next week.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Right, and so I know we're going to be discussing some of this with regards to the sidewalks and everything of what the waiver lists is and such. So Jess, with regards to the ZBA, the clock has started ticking, right? So they've got, what is it, 190 days, is it, or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, their estimate around December would be good if we had this tied up.
Okay, yeah, and again, this money that they're requesting, it's not like it has to be used within the year. It's more of that leverage that they know that they've got this funding. And when the warrant is written, the warrant will reflect that, it's not going to be, okay, you have to use it within the year. It's going to be, for the leverage.
I mean, using stuff in a year has not been an issue for us for other projects. So.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, but it's like, oh, all right. I don't think are we all set for this part? Okay, unless something major is going on in a committee report, we can skip over it. I know I don't have anything for housing.
The only thing I would say is that Conservation Commission, we're doing our waterways signs installation. So we're putting up little signs of Sandy Pond or Long Pond or Nonequacious Brook in a few locations. The signs have QR codes. We don't quite have the content up yet, although Cindy might be able to weigh in about, as soon as I hear from the rest of the commission, how fast can you get our content up when we send it to you?
Very quick.
Okay. So
Very
if you,
quick.
if you are flashing on QR codes this week, nothing happens.
There is actually a page there. We put up a sample page, I thought,
Okay,
called /wetlands or something like that. There's not much out there, but as soon as you can feed me the content, I can get you a sample.
yeah, and I just have to, but we have actual content. Like we have content, whoop, content. Yeah, for each one, it's detailed
Perfect.
content, yeah.
Content.
I
Looks great.
hate clicking on QR codes or something, and then you see like two little dinky lines of something.
Right, I know, doesn't make it worth it. Yeah, send me, that looks like a good copy and paste. Quick turnaround on that.
Yeah, I just have, I'll know after tomorrow night's meeting.
Okay, I'll be there.
That's it for conservation, so.
Okay. Gary, anything for historic?
Other than another 13 properties, completed forms are being has been submitted to Mass Historic, and George and Stacy will be meeting with Mass Historic on Friday to discuss those 13. So we still have phase 4, which should complete everything, and we're a little behind, but Stacy got caught up in some COVID in another country that she was in, and took a while to get back. So anyway.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, at least she's back, safe and
Oh,
sound.
yeah, just a little bit behind, that's all, but
Mhm.
understandable.
Julie?
Same old.
Okay. Okay. Colleen?
No, Noah was the big item on our last agenda, so. I
Okay.
just heard all of
We're up to date.
I gather Thursday night for Parks and Rec. Thursday night, they're gonna have feedback with regards to the ADA compliance for Kitty Junction. That's been out on the Facebook pages. I think it's Thursday and Saturday. So with that, and pretty much that's about it. So our next meeting is going to be September 7th at 7 o'clock. I'll make sure I update it, and I will get the public hearing notices out for 2 weeks prior to that. And I think that works out well. If there's nothing else,
Oh, no.
can I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn, please.
Okay, Barry does, and
Second.
Colleen seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You got it. Okay.
All right, good night, everybody.
All right, good night, and thank you so much.